What's up, Alex?
Hey, Paul. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. So we're over here at your studio, Precision Sound Studios.
That's right.
This is your studio in Central Park area,
Yeah. Upper
Central Park
West
West.
Side.
Yeah, and we're over here to do some mic comparisons with some maybe more boutique, less common mics.
Yeah. When we met last, we kind of pulled out all the mics.
Yeah.
And we had a really fun time kind of comparing the different tones and kind of seeing what might work for different styles. So excited to listen to those and kind of refresh our memory about what things sounded like.
Yeah, so it's been over a year, or not over a year, but just under a year probably
Yeah.
since we recorded these mic comparisons, actually. So I came over, and Alex had set up a bunch of mics from his cabinet for us to try out, and we made these comparison videos, and now we're back a year later. So this is going to sound like super fresh. Like I have
Yeah.
not listened to this at all. So it's kind of a cool thing for the mic comparison thing. It's not like I know or remember what each microphone sounds like.
Yeah. Completely fresh ears. Haven't heard it in months. And we've got two pretty cool microphones in this first comparison to talk about. The first one is the Coles 4038 classic ribbon microphone. Been around for got to be at least 75 years or more.
I've used this one a bunch in studios around town. I always find I've seen it on guitar. I want to say I've seen it on drum overheads.
Very common for drum overheads.
I've not used it on saxophone though, except
Yeah.
this. I think this was the first time here was
Yeah.
using it on saxophone.
Yeah. I mean, like all of the ribbon mics, it has a pretty extended low frequency response and a smooth treble. So it's very common that people would lean on ribbon mics for brighter sources or sources that have very complex harmonics like woodwinds, other brass instruments, drums where you have, cymbal overtones. Sometimes you want to smooth that stuff out. So it's kind of a reliable, smooth sounding microphone. And then to compare that, we've got something else, the Manley Silver microphone, large diaphragm vacuum tube condenser mic, relatively new microphone, only 4 or 5 years old.
I've never seen this mic, so I've seen it online but just in passing. But I've never used one around town, so this was my first time even hearing or experiencing one of these mics. And I do remember thinking this one was pretty cool and interesting.
Yeah, I think most people, since it's a relatively recently produced microphone, not a lot of people have had a chance to try it on all the different sources. It's probably most people are purchasing this microphone for vocals, but I've really enjoyed the tone that it has on a variety of instruments. It's, I would say, on the smoother and more mellow side of condenser microphones. It's not as bright and potentially sibilant the way a lot of other condenser microphones can be. So again, for Paul's sax, this could kind of lend a smooth, flattering tone, especially kind of when he's playing, higher notes. It'll kind of tame those, but it'll still capture a lot of detail. Probably, I would expect, again, not having heard the comparison in a few months, my intuition is going to tell me we're going to hear the Coles is going to sound slightly darker. The Manley is going to sound a little bit more crisp, a little more note definition.
Sweet. Let's check it out. Microphone comparison time. Manley Silver versus Coles 4038. Cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would say that was a great demonstration of why one might want two different kinds of microphones.
Yeah, they were very different.
Very different. One really sounded to me like 1950s or 60s recordings
Yeah.
versus 80s, 90s, 2000s, kind
Yeah.
of modern and bright.
Yeah.
What's your take on it, Paul?
I noticed the difference between the ranges. Like I really liked the Manley Silver in the low part of the saxophone, actually, because when comparing it to the Coles down the low part was almost a little too dark
Yeah.
and almost a too stuffy. And then like down in the basement on the saxophone with the Manley, it was like, oh, this is kind of like nice and lush and warm and clear.
Yeah.
But then it was like it flipped when it went to the top. So it was like in the upper register, the Manley Silver was too bright and the Coles was like, oh, this is great up there, you
Yeah.
know? And I was sort of expecting to like the Manley Silver top to bottom because I remembered liking that one a lot. And it's way different now, like after all this time has passed.
It's a good demonstration of why repertoire really matters in microphone choice. What the part is. Not every microphone is going to work for every kind of playing, every composition. And one of the reasons to kind of have different microphones is to kind of think about when you have a project in the studio, what is the sound that's going to lend itself to this project, and kind of what part of the range of the instrument do I want to favor?
Yeah, that was actually something when you were saying before about the Coles, you were like, oh, I would use it on drums, and a lot of people use it on drum overheads. And it was like, well, what type of style would you want to use the Coles on? Like, if it's like a rock song, it might darken up the cymbals. Would it be too dark for like some sort of brighter sounding music? Or would it, is this jazz tune that you're playing, maybe it's in a minor key, maybe it's a darker, muddier composition. Like if you're using that Coles on the overheads on this dark song, would it be just too dark overall? And vice versa, too bright for the Manley? Like this song is a bright, happy song, like That Was Cherokee. It's in a major key. It's already a bright sounding thing.
Yeah.
Like, is that going to be too bright? What type of style would you use? I guess those come into play.
Sure. And so much of that has to do with the dynamics of the performance and the timbre that then results from that. The Coles are often favorable on drums, particularly when you have a very loud, bombastic playing style, because when you hit cymbals hard, they start to get very bright and strident, and that darker tone can kind of flatter that and in a way compensate for what is a very bright source. But for something that's very light, where you have pianissimo hits and you really have a lot of low-level detail, then maybe something like the Manley would actually work better, where it's capturing a little bit more nuance, a little bit faster response. So in regards to saxophone, I think a lot of it has to do with kind of understanding the composition, understanding what is the sonic reference point for the whole recording. Are we trying to make a recording that sounds very modern and three-dimensional, a lot of detail and space around the instrument, or are we trying to make a recording that is evocative of a classic record, for example?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, Alex, thank you for all this and sharing your space and sharing these microphones.
Thank you, Paul.
It's been super fun.
A total blast.
Yeah, and I hope everyone out there really likes them. And, hit up Alex on his website and Instagram. It'll be, listed in the description below. And let us know what you think. Like, do you want to hear more of these? Is there mics you want us to check out? Do you have questions about mic placement or how nulls work, or, just anything? Please hit us up. And yeah, this stuff is super fun.
Yeah.
Cool.